Sure whether it's a joke, and it's kind of difficult to get laughs or be funny when you're wearing one of those collars around.
But it does help.
It does help. Now, how did you do yours? What happened?
I don't know how I did it. Haven't a clue.
There are legends whose lives shine so brightly that the world forgets they are human. And then there is Doris Day. To the public, she seemed like the embodiment of sunshine, a woman whose voice could lift spirits and whose smile felt like a promise that everything would be all right. She looked almost untouchable, as if sadness could never reach her. But behind the warmth that millions adored lived a story marked by heartbreak, sacrifice, and a quiet strength that grew from surviving far more than she ever revealed. Her life invites you to look closer. The cheerful woman singing Que Sera, Sera had known fear long before she ever knew fame. The actress who made romantic comedies feel effortless had endured the kind of emotional turmoil that could have broken anyone else. And through all of it, she found a way to keep giving joy to a world that never truly saw the weight she carried. Doris Day reached the heights of Hollywood when the golden age of film was at its brightest. Yet she spent much of her life searching for peace that fame never brought her. She became a symbol of innocence, even though her own innocence had been tested and torn early in life. She became a beloved star, yet much of her journey was spent trying to rebuild herself after heartbreak, who kept going even when life kept taking more than it gave, and who ultimately turned her pain into compassion that reached far beyond the screen. The world saw her as the smiling girl next door. What they did not see was the quiet fight she waged behind that smile for most of her life. This is the real story of Doris Day, the woman who carried sunlight in her voice while carrying storms in her heart.
Origins and family roots. Doris Day was born Doris Marianne Kappelhoff in Cincinnati, long before anyone imagined her name would one day light up marquees around the world. Her family lived an ordinary life, one shaped by modest means and the simple routines of a hard-working household. Her mother, Alma, was gentle and steady, carrying a quiet hope for her children. Her father, William, was a music teacher whose passion for melody filled their home with a kind of comfort Doris would cling to later in life. But the harmony inside the house did not last. Doris grew up with the unsettling knowledge that marriages, even the ones children believe are unbreakable, can split open without warning. Her father's betrayal shattered the unity of their family, leaving a mark deeper than anyone realized. For a young girl who relied on stability, the sudden fracture forced her into an early understanding of disappointment, and it shaped the careful way she approached trust for the rest of her life. Yet her mother's strength gave her something to hold on to. Alma worked tirelessly to keep the family afloat, refusing to allow bitterness to overshadow her children's future. She encouraged Doris to follow whatever path made her feel alive, even if the world felt uncertain. In that support, Doris found the first light that guided her. Their home was not rich, but it was filled with determination. And it was in that space, surrounded by both love and loss, that Doris began forming the resilience that would carry her through the battles ahead. The roots of her story were planted in places where joy and heartbreak lived side by side, creating a foundation that taught her how to rise, even when the ground beneath her shifted.
Childhood struggles and early influences. Doris Day's childhood looked simple from the outside, the way many childhoods do. But beneath the surface was a young girl trying to understand why life had cracked open around her. The separation of her parents weighed heavily on her, leaving her with a lingering fear of instability. She learned early that nothing was guaranteed, not even the people who were supposed to stay. Despite the emotional turbulence, Doris found refuge in movement and music. When she danced, the world brightened. Her talent was obvious from the start, graceful and natural, as if her body knew how to tell stories her heart was too young to speak aloud. She dreamed of becoming a dancer, imagining herself gliding across stages she had never seen, carried by a hope bigger than anything in her small corner of Ohio. But life had another painful lesson waiting. A horrific car accident when she was a teenager shattered not only her dreams of dancing, but nearly her spirit as well. Her leg was badly injured, and the path she had envisioned disappeared in a single moment. The girl who once expressed herself through effortless movement was suddenly confined to a bed, facing months of recovery and the crushing realization that her future had changed without her permission. In the quiet of that room, she discovered something unexpected. Her voice, something she had never paid much attention to, became her companion. She sang to escape the silence, to soothe the ache of what she had lost. Through those long healing months, her voice grew stronger, and so did her resolve. She was no longer a dancer, but she was not defeated. She had been forced to stop, but life was nudging her toward another path, one she had not yet imagined. Her struggles shaped her, but they also opened the door to the talent that one day make the world fall in love with her.
First steps into career. When Doris finally healed enough to move again, she did not return to the world she had once planned for. The life of a dancer was gone, but she carried something new with her, a voice that had grown out of heartbreak and long, lonely days of recovery. Her mother noticed it first. The tone was warm and effortless, filled with emotion that felt older than her years. She encouraged her daughter to take singing lessons, hoping that the voice, which had comforted her through pain, might now guide her toward possibility. Doris began singing at small radio stations and local venues, nervous at first, but quickly discovering that music gave her the same sense of freedom dancing once had. Only now, instead of moving across a room, she moved people. Listeners felt something in her tone, a sincerity that wrapped around them. Her voice wasn't loud or showy. It was soft, bright, and honest, like sunlight slipping through a window on a morning you didn't expect to feel hopeful. Before long, band leaders started to notice her. She joined several touring groups, often the youngest member on the bus, still carrying pieces of the girl who had once believed her dreams had ended. Nights on the road were a mix of exhaustion and discovery. She learned how to hold a room, how to navigate the world with a polite smile even when she was homesick, and how to trust her voice when she didn't yet trust the path unfolding in front of her. Then came the words that would change everything. A band leader told her that her last name, Kappelhoff, was too long to fit on a marquee. She needed something simple, something the world could remember instantly. So Doris Kappelhoff became Doris Day. The name felt light, as if it carried a sense of new beginnings she desperately needed. She was still young, unsure and quietly searching for who she was meant to be, but she was moving now, step by step, toward a future she never could have imagined while lying in that hospital bed. The path was fragile and uncertain, but it was hers, and she followed it with a courage she didn't yet realize she possessed.
Breakthrough moment. Doris Day's breakthrough came at a time when she least expected it. She had built a steady career touring with big bands, lending her bright voice to songs that audiences loved. Still, she believed she was only passing through that world, filling space until life decided what it wanted from her. Then one day, everything shifted. She was asked to sing the haunting song Sentimental Journey, a track that would define her early career and resonate with millions of Americans longing for home during the final days of World War II. The moment the song hit the airwaves, something changed. Her voice, filled with tenderness and quiet longing, captured the hearts of soldiers and families across the country. It wasn't dramatic or theatrical, it was real. People heard their own emotions reflected in her tone, and they held on to it like a lifeline. Doris became more than a singer. She became a voice that comforted a nation healing from war. Her rise was gentle but steady. Doors that had once been closed now opened for her with surprising ease. Hollywood took notice, though Doris herself had never seen acting as part of her story. Yet the studio heads could sense something in her presence, a mix of sincerity and strength that made her impossible to ignore. She was invited to audition for a film, and despite her nerves, she walked into the room with the quiet resilience she had learned through years of setbacks. To everyone's shock, including her own, she won the role. Suddenly, Doris Day was not just a singer, but an actress, stepping into a new world. She brought the same honesty to the screen that she brought to her music, and audiences connected with her instantly. Her breakthrough was not loud or sudden. It was a moment built from years of pain, persistence, and unexpected shifts. It was the moment when the world finally saw what she had carried inside her all along.
Peak career and golden era. As the 1950s and 1960s unfolded, Doris Day became one of the brightest stars in Hollywood. Yet her fame never felt loud or forceful. It grew from something quieter, her warmth, her sincerity, and the way she could light up a scene without ever trying to steal it. Movies began to feel incomplete without her gentle charm or her easy, graceful presence. She went from one film to another, each role reinforcing her place as America's sweetheart. During this period, she created characters who felt familiar, as if they were people the audience already knew. She had a way of speaking that made her lines feel real, and a way of smiling that felt like a soft reassurance in a world that often felt uncertain. Films like Pillow Talk, Calamity Jane, and Move Over, Darling made her a household name. She became the actress people turned to when they needed light, comfort, or a reminder that kindness still mattered. Her voice remained just as powerful. Songs she recorded during this era became anthems of their time, none more iconic than Que Sera, Sera. Ironically, the song's message about accepting fate hinted at the very struggles she was quietly carrying off-screen. But audiences heard only joy, and they held on to her songs the way one holds on to hope. Even as she reached the peak of fame, Doris never seemed to chase status. She cared more about doing the work well, about making people feel something. She carried herself with humility, despite being one of the most profitable stars in Hollywood's history. Yet beneath the glamour and studio lights, she lived with a growing sense of exhaustion, one that no one could see behind the carefully maintained image. But for the world watching her, this was her golden era, a time when she seemed untouchable, radiant, and endlessly uplifting.
Personal life and hidden pain. While audiences adored Doris Day for her brightness, her personal life told a very different story, one marked by heartbreak, betrayal, and quiet battles she rarely spoke about. Her first marriages had already left deep wounds, but she carried on, believing that love would eventually find her in the form she had always dreamed of. Instead, she entered relationships that brought more sorrow than comfort. Her marriage to Martin Melcher, the one she believed would finally give her stability, became the most devastating chapter of all. Behind closed doors, Doris endured manipulation disguised as love. Melcher controlled every aspect of her finances, decisions, and career, presenting himself as the protector she wanted while hiding his true intentions. Doris trusted him, believing in the bond they shared. She worked tirelessly, taking film after film, unaware she was funding a future she would not own. When he died unexpectedly in 1968, Doris was left in shock. She mourned the man she thought he was, only to discover soon after that he had left her bankrupt. Every dollar she had earned through years of relentless work was gone. Her fortune had been mismanaged and stolen, leaving her with debts she had never known existed. The betrayal crushed her. She had spent her life giving light to others, only to find her own world dimmed by the actions of someone she loved. Yet even in her grief, she showed the resilience that had carried her since childhood. Instead of collapsing, she pushed forward, determined to rebuild what had been taken from her. But it was a private pain, one she carried quietly. The world still saw her as sunshine, never realizing how much darkness she fought through when the cameras turned away.
Turning point and decline. After the shock of discovering the financial ruin left behind by her late husband, Doris Day found herself standing at a crossroads she never expected. She had spent decades working tirelessly, believing her life was secured, only to learn that the world she trusted had been built on lies. What came next was not a graceful transition, but a jarring shift that pushed her into unfamiliar territory. She was suddenly forced into a television series contract she had never agreed to, a commitment Melcher had signed on her behalf without her knowledge. Doris stepped onto television not out of desire, but necessity. She carried the weight of shattered trust, financial fear, and personal exhaustion. Yet, even wounded, she showed remarkable strength. She honored the contract, performing week after week, doing what she had always done, giving her best, even when the circumstances were unfair. Her show became a success, not because of glamour, but because of her sincerity. Still, it took a toll. Hollywood had changed, and so had she. The world was moving into a new era of entertainment, one that no longer aligned with who she was becoming. Slowly, Doris began to retreat from the spotlight. Fame felt different now, heavier, less magical. She had spent her life giving joy to millions, yet she had received so little peace in return. When she stepped away from acting entirely, it was not out of defeat, it was self-preservation. She had endured too much loss, too much betrayal, and too much public expectation. She needed quiet. She needed space. She needed a life that belonged to her again. The decline of her Hollywood presence was gradual, but the emotional unraveling behind it was real. She mourned the innocence she had once carried. She mourned the trust she had lost. She mourned the years spent shining for others while dimming herself. And yet, in this turning point, something brave began to surface. Doris Day started reclaiming her life not as a movie star, but as a woman who had learned the cost of giving too much of herself away.
Legacy and meaning. When people speak of Doris Day today, they remember a woman who radiated warmth on screen. But her legacy extends far deeper than her films or songs. She left behind a story shaped not only by talent, but by resilience born from heartache. Her career sparkled with charm and light, yet her true impact lies in the quiet ways she rose each time life tried to break her. One of the most defining parts of her later years was her devotion to animals. After leaving Hollywood, Doris poured her energy into compassion. She rescued, protected, and advocated for creatures who had no voice. The same softness audiences once recognized in her performances became the foundation of a movement that changed how America viewed animal welfare. In saving them, she was also saving herself, filling the emotional void left by years of personal struggle. Her legacy lives in songs that feel timeless and in films that continue to warm generations. But it also lives in the courage she showed in rebuilding her life after betrayal, in her willingness to choose peace over fame, and in her insistence on kindness despite the pain she carried. Doris Day taught the world that strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, steady,
and shaped by experiences that never make headlines. She became a symbol of purity in an industry known for its harshness, not because she lived a perfect life, but because she faced an imperfect one with grace. Her story reminds us that even those who seem to live in the light walk through shadows we never see. And yet, they can still find ways to shine.
Closing reflection. There is something quietly moving about looking back at the life of Doris Day. People often remember her for her bright smile, her warm voice, or the effortless charm she carried into every film, but her story runs much deeper than that. Her life reminds us how often the world falls in love with a version of someone that hides the battles they fought behind the scenes. Doris gave her audience comfort, hope, and light at a time when the world desperately needed all three. Yet, off-camera, she was learning how to survive heartbreak, loss, and the weight of being seen as something she never quite felt she was. As her career aged into legend, she stepped away from the glitter of Hollywood and found peace in quieter places. She poured her heart into animal welfare, using her voice not to promote a new film, but to protect lives that had no way to speak for themselves. Maybe that was the truest version of Doris Day, a woman who carried a gentle kind of strength, someone who refused to let the pain she endured turn her cold, someone who chose compassion again and again, even when the world had not always offered it to her. Today, when her films play on television or her songs drift through a room, it is easy to feel how much of her spirit she left behind. She gave people a place to escape to, a world where kindness mattered and happiness felt possible. For many, she became a reminder that even the softest souls can survive the hardest chapters. Looking back, Doris Day's legacy is not just about timeless movies or unforgettable melodies. It is about resilience. It is about the courage to keep going when life keeps asking more of you than you ever expected. And it is about a woman who carried both joy and sorrow with grace, even when the world only wanted to see one side of her. Her story lingers because it feels human. It feels real. And it leaves us with a quiet truth. Sometimes the brightest lights are the ones that have walked through the deepest darkness. Doris Day was one of those lights, and her glow has never truly faded.